folks, listeners, and viewers of this podcast, and welcome to Usala Media, Usala and Encounters. The program is Encounters. This time, Usala is encountering Cherelle Parker, one of the Democratic candidates for mayor of Philadelphia. I'm your host, Fred Ramirez, and again, Usala Media stands for USA Latin America. And on this occasion, again, we have Cherelle Parker with us right here in the heart of the barrio of Philadelphia, the Hispanic community of Philadelphia. Beaming to you as always with trying to bring you great personalities and great conversation about what's going on, and that's why we call it Encounters. Cherelle Parker, welcome.
Thank you so very much, Fred, for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today.
Oh, it's an honor and privilege for us and the whole crew here, this young up-and-coming staff. I want to break away immediately and ask you the obvious. You are a candidate for mayor. You're one of the top three, really, right now, according to the media last week, which is great. We're happy to have you here, but we need to I'd like to find out your thoughts on certain subject matter that not only is important to all Philadelphians, but is also specifically to this community where we are. North Central Philadelphia, the Hispanic community. I don't have to tell you it's a relatively poor community. The census says we're 40% poverty. I have a feeling it's higher than that, 45. But we're concentrated in zip codes 190, 19133, Lehigh Avenue, 19140, Hunting Park area. And so that's why we're here. Present, and the first thing I want to ask you, Cherelle Parker, is, look, right now there seems to be a perception in the city of Philadelphia that city government is overwhelmed, that we have all these social problems, crime, violence, and the perception is that city government is overwhelmed and gives adequate services, but not good services. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Being mediocre has never been something that I'm okay with. Philadelphia should pursue excellence in all that we do, especially when it comes to delivering services to our people, because they deserve it. And I feel like one of the best ways to measure whether or not someone will be effective in a new role is to examine how effective and efficient they've been in roles that they've had in the past. So as a former district council person, as a former state rep, delivering services effectively and efficiently, and quite frankly, Fred, is something that I think Philadelphians are really frustrated about, and that is there doesn't appear to be a sense of urgency. They don't understand why people want safer, cleaner, and greener streets right now, greener communities right now, and why we need access to economic opportunity for all. So I thank you for that question. That's extremely important.
Economic opportunity, clearly very important in this Philadelphia community. You mentioned safe streets, sanitation. That absolutely. Look, when we go around with Usala Media, we have a show called On the Street. And we talk about people. That's what people bring up. They bring up the crime wave, young people attacking elderly folks. It used to be at night. Now it's in the middle of the day. Also, they fear that, as you know, Center City is suffering attacks. So people are fearful of that. They want someone to address that. That has to be addressed. If not, the people will lose interest in the political system, which I'm going to go back to that. Now, I want your thoughts on this. Policing, community policing, stop and frisk. Are you pro-police? You think they should be curtailed? What are your thoughts on that, Cherelle Parker?
So one, I am unapologetically against unconstitutional stop and frisk. I, during my tenure in council, put a question on the ballot that gave Philadelphians an opportunity to let their voices be heard on this area. And overwhelmingly, Philadelphians said that we do not support unconstitutional stop and frisk. With that being said, I introduced a comprehensive neighborhood safety and community policing plan that called for us to get police officers away from desks and on our streets, walking the beat, riding the bikes, getting to know the communities that they're sworn to protect and serve. Not there just because someone calls 911, but being proactive, there as guardians and not warriors. Because I don't care what zip code, and I appreciate you, Fred, noting that 19133 and 19140, both zip codes that I know extremely well. I spent a lot of time on a 1100 block of Indiana Avenue, and I know Lehigh Avenue, and I know this Hispanic community because growing up, I was here with my godparents and friends, and wherever I go, people want proactive community policing. But Fred, they also want something that I'm sure you all have heard when you have been focusing on your program on the streets. They want better lighting. They want more cameras. They want greener trees. They want neighborhoods to be aesthetically appealing. They want year-round access to educational opportunities. Let's talk about language access. That those things are extremely important. They want police to have the technology that they need to solve crimes. We're in a highly technical. I was watching your team set up this morning, and I was like, wow, all of this equipment, this is highly technical, even for us to have this conversation. We need to make sure law enforcement has the tools that they need to in a modern day society, solve crimes. We're trying to solve crimes with Flintstone equipment. We've got to make sure that we can solve crimes and we're technologically efficient.
And how would you do that? From everything from street lighting, you're absolutely right, very important. People don't go out here in the evening anymore. Street lights are out. How would you get that done?
We would do that by implementing our comprehensive plan in the way we've done it in our district. One, we would make sure that there is a neighborhood safety and economic development plan for every council district in the city of Philadelphia. And then we'll have to have the plan to say this is how many cameras that we're going to install in this community. This is how many trees we're planting. This is how many small businesses we're going to help change their facades. How often are we going to have street cleaning in these particular communities? How many PHL taking care of business? Those are the people you'll see now. They usually have like a neon colored sweatshirt on, and you see them sweeping our streets, and they PHL taking care of business. We have to measure it, because if we can't measure it, that means we can't manage it. And I want to make sure people can see it. Fred, if anyone is elected and they tell you that they, want safer, cleaner streets, people want to be able to see it. They don't want to hear a speech about it.
I've been hearing it for years.
They want to see officers walking the streets in their neighborhood, talking to people in their neighborhoods, trying to prevent crime, just not responding. They want us to be more proactive. That's who I am, Fred. I'm unapologetic about requiring results. I'm not an expert articulator of problems. I'm a fixer. My job is to provide solutions, and that's what I've done, and that's what I'll do as mayor of the city of Philadelphia.
Folks, you're listening to and viewing Usala Media. This program, which is Usala Encounters, is brought to you right here in the heart of the barrio of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. And I say USA, we have a lot of viewers that are outside the country. So we welcome Mexico, Venezuela, England also, and the Northeast. As a matter of fact, we also know we have a viewing audience in Orlando, Florida. So welcome to all. We are interviewing and having a nice conversation with Cherelle Parker. Cherelle Parker is a Democratic candidate for mayor of Philadelphia. For those of you not familiar with Philadelphia, this is a Democratic town. Whoever gets the Democratic nomination is the next mayor. And Cherelle Parker is one of the leading candidates of their 3 or 4, and female too, which is important, especially to our viewing audience. So thank you again. Again, USA, Latin America, Usala Media Encounters. Cherelle Parker, tell me something. Now, Okay, so we've heard about crime, violence, which is taking place in the streets, economic opportunity for all, very important. We're biased, of course, because we look at it and say we don't want economic opportunity only downtown. We want it up here too. We have good folks that live here, literally under the very stressful conditions. Education is one of those topics that is very important. Now, when I mean education, I'm even putting into that pot charter schools, public schools, education, public education. A lot of people don't know that charter schools, in a way, are public schools. What are your thoughts on that?
Fred, thank you so very much for that question. For the first time in the history of our city, we are going to have a mayor who is unapologetic about supporting public education and advocating for it in a way that folks know that we don't care if a school is a traditional public, a charter school, or even a parochial school. We want quality seats with quality instruction and in quality 21st century modern buildings. We have to do things differently. I want access to year-round educational opportunities. Fred, guess what? The way we deliver as it relates to our scheduling of public education, we deliver it like during the summer, our kids are going to go work the farms like they were in the 1800s. That's not happening here anymore. Our kids need to have year-round educational opportunities with traditional academic instruction, but we need the building trades back in, teaching our kids skills to be carpenters and electricians and operating engineers and steam fitters and sprinkler fitters, learning those skills so that when we talk about building new schools, building new affordable housing, and the next part is close to my heart, modernizing and maintaining our existing housing. Why aren't we, Fred, training our children to be able to do that work? We talk about financial literacy. We talk about coding. I'm so impressed with the technical team here. How many of our kids are learning in school that even the technical skill set needed for us to sit here and have this conversation, this is a skill set that our kids should have access to?
Well, let me tell you, Cherelle Parker, if anybody has influence with the labor unions, you do. It's an open secret now. And you were talking building trades. I'm old enough to remember that during the 80s, the building trades training programs, they used to be on North Broad Street. Very big, very big. They used to have Hispanic desks in those days. I remember two of them, and they were recruiting, constantly doing. Absolutely, look, we need all sorts of the building trades. That is the backbone. Not all of our children have to go to college or higher education. We need good, skilled craftsmen. So the only thing I urge you is, please bear this in mind. What you say is true, but we have to implement. We have to enforce that.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Fred. And I also appreciate your affirming during those times that we were very intentional about making sure that there were Hispanic recruiters, that we were intentional about recruiting Hispanic people, men and women, to be a part of that system and those training opportunities. So when you hear me talk about Black and brown communities, those who have traditionally not had as much representation in those industries as we would like to have, now we're going to infuse that into our public school system, and everyone will have an opportunity to learn something. Because I thought about something, Fred. You can't learn if you love something, or even if you like something, if you've never had an opportunity to do it, to see what it means. Maybe if growing up, I knew that this was an opportunity for me, that, technical skill set would have been something that I wanted to take advantage of. But I knew that I loved English and reading and writing and teaching. because my teachers and what I
Right, you were a teacher for a while too, yes.
I'm a certified secondary high school English teacher by profession. I could go to a school and teach right now because of my certification, but that was because I had access to it, Fred. And I want those opportunities to be readily available for all Philadelphians, but particularly Black and brown communities that have been disproportionately negatively impacted by generational poverty. You and I were talking earlier. You know that I'm not a silver spoon kid. I'm not a rich kid. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandmother was my rock. She was a domestic worker. That meant she cleaned rich people's houses to take care of me. We were on welfare. My grandmother had food stamps to take care of me. But no matter what, she told me education was the equalizer. It is what I should use so that I didn't have to clean. If I wanted to, I could choose it. But she wanted me to have other opportunities. And Fred, that's how I think.
Good to know, good to know. Again, folks, you are listening to USA Latin America, Usala Media, brought to you from North Philadelphia, the heart of the Hispanic community, here on North American Street. We have with us today Cherelle Parker. I'm your host, Fred Ramirez, and we have the show Encounters. This time we're encountering Cherelle Parker. She is right here with us in the middle of the barrio. We thank her for that. It's a wonderful time to have to discuss all these issues that are important, not only in the Hispanic community. I realize that, but it also impacts the whole city of Philadelphia, and we have to address these issues, whether we're uncomfortable with them or not. Parker, one of the things I'm interested in, you touched upon education. Mental health goes hand in hand with police and the violence. I'm in the field. I know mental health. It is certain statistics that you should be aware of. In North Central Philadelphia alone, in the Hispanic community, mindless substance abuse, if you take that away from the equation, so substance abuse, which is big here, distribution of drugs, drug corners, the mayhem that it causes. If you take that away from the equation, we still have presently, in these two zip codes, approximately 4,000 people receiving outpatient mental health services. Now, it can be, and the major diagnosis is always depression, acute depression. Why? We have a lot of single mothers raising children. We have a lot of grandmas raising children. We have a lot of families in which father is absent. Of course, it's stressful. And it's right here. They see the poverty, they see the violence, the drug trades. Mental health is acute. It's necessary here. It's really essential. 4,000 people that we count of. Lord knows maybe it's even higher than that. Give us some thoughts on that.
It's a little emotional for me hearing you talk about a constituency. I'm a working single mother too, raised by my grandparents, my grandmother. For the first time, and I'll say this, in the Black community, the Hispanic community, mental and behavioral health, that was not something that we talked about out loud growing up. If we were to think back over our lives, even if there were people in our families who we could tell may have needed some supports, we would just say, well, that's just uncle such and such or cousin such and such, and they just, don't worry about them. Well, for the first time, the stigma and the stigma is removed, and the value of having access to mental and behavioral health supports, it is something now that we can ensure our people have access to. And because I have the lived experience, not Fred because, someone had to tell me about a white paper, but because I lived it, and I know what that clinical depression and that pressure you talked about, watching my grandparents attempt to take care, of me, and they were older, right? Because they were grandparents. So making sure that organizations like yours have the cultural competency, because Fred, guess what else we don't talk about? Sometimes government likes to develop policy. I don't care if it's mental and behavioral health or in other areas, and they don't have people developing a policy who are like those who are receiving the supports. So cultural competency is important for me. You know, that's why the Hispanic community at the executive level will be represented in my administration, because we need people who are Hispanic, who know what it's like to deliver services, mental and behavioral health supports, educational supports, economic development supports, educational training, who are Hispanic. So we don't have what I call, and my girlfriend laughed at me when I call it, I know what's best for you's people policy making. That's when people come in and they sit down with you, Fred, and you say, well, wait, I'm a Hispanic man. I've been Hispanic all my life. And they don't know what it's like to be you, but they come in to try to tell you that they know what's best for your community. Absolutely not.
You're hitting a whole different show on that one. Boy, can we talk about that.
Absolutely none of that, Fred. The Hispanic community will be represented, mental and behavioral health supports, along with the language access, because what people don't get sometimes is, I don't care if you're talking about the Hispanic community or the immigrant community, there are trust issues. And if somebody is trying to serve me, who I don't necessarily think understands me, I'm going to think twice about whether or not I can open up, even be vulnerable, or tell them the truth that I am depressed, that I feel anxiety. I don't want to get up out of bed in the morning. I'm just down. How do I get through that? And you made me emotional because I thought about my grandmother.
You're correct on that. We forget North Central Philadelphia, where we operate. That's what I know best. I can also say that a lot of people forget that the largest language component, cultural competency that we're getting lately, seeking services, is Arabic speakers. That's why we have up to 10 Arabic-speaking therapists in North Philadelphia. And people, what? Yes. They come in from other parts of the city, by the way, because they know that we have a large Vietnamese-speaking population in the Olney section. So, yes, absolutely, very close to my heart, that topic, but it's a citywide topic, but it's also acute here. Folks, you're listening to and viewing Usala Media from the heart of North Philadelphia, the Hispanic community of El Barrio in Philadelphia. You're listening to Usala Media and our show, Usala Encounters. We are your host, Fred Ramirez, and we have with us today Cherelle Parker, formerly of the 9th Councilman District. She resigned to run for mayor, one of the top 3 or 4 tier mayoral candidates, and we have her here sitting with us right here in our living room today. That's great. Cherelle Parker, one of the things I want to ask you is youth. Look, the Hispanic community of Philadelphia is very young. Although they say we're probably 15 to 20% of the population, and as I said earlier, of that 15 to, I'm talking about the concentration in the barrio. 40% say they are poor. I have a feeling it's higher, 45, but most of it is very young people. And the perception is here that those young people seem to be losing confidence in the system and the political process. They tend to think now, especially pandemic had a lot to do with that, of the political system, the political process that gives me local government can no longer do it for me. Why should I get involved with that? I would like for you to address young people. What do you thought? How do you get them involved?
That's a good one. You heard me, Fred, say I'm an English teacher, and one of my favorite authors and activists is a gentleman named James Baldwin.
But of course, you're hitting the classics now. I mean, James Baldwin, come on. Yes, absolutely.
He's in an interview.
Good for you.
He's in an interview in the 1960s, Fred, and the reporter he's talking to says, James, mainstream America cares about civil rights too. And at that time, James was in New York, and he says, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. Young people that you are describing, That is exactly what they're saying to us. You want me to be civically engaged. You want me to vote. You want me to be active in my neighborhood. But you haven't given me a reason to believe that government and voting can work for me or the community that I'm a part of. That's what I meant earlier, Fred, when I
So
said
Cherelle Parker echoed James Baldwin. And you would say what?
And I would say, I'm going to make you a believer because you are going to see tangible differences, tangible changes in how city services are delivered to your area. And you're going to be able to see it and touch it and feel it. And they not just be words. When I say a safer neighborhood, you're going to be able to see a proactive presence from law enforcement. Listen, with zero tolerance for any misuse and or abuse of authority. I won't tolerate it under a Parker administration. If there are bad cops that are misusing and abusing their power with black and brown people or any Philadelphian, for that matter, the Hispanic community, off the force they go. They can sue me and take me to court, but we'll fight it out in court. But you want to see an improvement in your neighborhood, access to employment opportunities. And you heard me say that I grew up on welfare. I grew up getting subsidized food, cheese and butter. I don't know that because somebody told me about that, Fred. I know it because I lived it. Well, guess what? I don't want Hispanic young people, black young people, or any Philadelphians having to need access to that. I want us to be put on a path to self-sufficiency. I want to give Philadelphians the tools they need to take care of themselves. That gives you dignity. My grandmother, although she was a domestic worker on welfare, guess what, Fred? Mommy and Daddy owned the house we moved into. There's something powerful about owning your own and then being able to see your kids get an education. That's how part of the way we reduce violence. Yeah, police have a role in it, but it's not the only way. Access to economic opportunities and educational opportunities for our young people. That's the way we're going to help to decrease violence in our city as well and make them believers.
Good to know that. Okay, now, if you have, I don't know, quick final words for the audience that's looking at you right now and listening to you, what would you say before we close out?
Fred, I am unapologetic about stating to the listening audience that I am going to make Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, and greenest city in America that provides access to economic opportunity for all of Philadelphia, black, Hispanic, white, immigrant community, everyone. Our city will be safer, it'll be cleaner and greener, and we will have access to economic opportunity for all.
Folks, you've been listening to and hearing and viewing Usala Media, our program brought to you from Philadelphia, from the heart of the barrio on North American Street, which is called Usala Encounters. Your host, Fred Ramirez. Today, we've had Cherelle Parker. Thank you, Cherelle Parker, for spending some time with us, for sharing your views and your thoughts and your ideals about what a better Philadelphia should look like. I thank you.